Welcome back to ICMICDS-22. Now we have a talk by Dr. Dia Thomas on the topic a deep dive into ransomware attacks. Dr. Dia Thomas completed her PhD in cybersecurity from the Department of Computing, Macquarie University, Australia. We, the Department of Mathematics and CETA, wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Before I start, thank you so much for Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology, and specifically the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science for giving me an opportunity to, provide you a talk on ransomware attack. Let me share my screen and let's start. So, can anyone please enable the screen sharing, because from my end, I'm not able to share my screen. Yep, thanks. Okay, so a deep dive into ransomware attack. So this particular presentation will give you an awareness on ransomware attack and different types of ransomware attack, different encryption techniques used in the ransomware attack. And I will also take you through a case study of the ransomware attack, that is the Colonial Pipeline attack, which happened last year, 2022. And then we will have a discussion on the ransomware protection measures and recovery approaches as well. Now, moving on to what is ransomware attack, many of us have already experienced in 2017 WannaCry. Probably you might have heard in news about the WannaCry ransomware attack. So it's basically a malware attack which seizes the system as well as the files, and you can't recover that system or the files until a ransom fee is paid. Now, what this ransomware attack does, it exploits the existing system or network vulnerabilities, or it may use some kind of social engineering techniques like, the phishing emails in order to penetrate into the system. Now, what it normally does is once it penetrates into the system, it locks the files, it encrypts the files, and you can't recover the files until you pay a ransom. And ransom is basically bitcoins or cryptocurrency that you need to pay in order to get the data back. Now, one of the peculiar properties of ransomware is that it has got the ability to self-propagate, which means it is a worm. It is not contained within a particular system. Rather, it can, move from system to system, network to network, organization to organization, even country to country. That's what we have seen in the WannaCry attack in 2017, right? What happened is, like, within 4 days, it actually infected around 200K of computer system around in 150 countries. So that's a span of propagation of this kind of malwares. Now, if you look, the different stages or anatomy of ransomware attack, it goes through delivering the ransomware attack, then going to the encryption of the files, and then having a ransom demand, and then finally decrypting the files. So moving on to the distribution vectors, which is used by the ransomware. One of the foremost kind of vector or the means through which ransomware is delivered is through the malicious files. And these malicious files may come in the form of, malicious attachments, or it may be like embedded in a link. So when you click the link, you are in effect, downloading that malicious files. And how it is done is through a phishing email. Now, just by opening that particular phishing email does not actually infect your system. You have to, as you know, you need to click the link or you need to open the attachment. Now, if the attachment is kind of a JavaScript, what it normally does is it establishes a connection with the control and command server. Now, if that file is kind of Excel file, then probably that ransomware would be like a macro embedded in that file. So that one of the best security practice is to disable the macros in Microsoft Office. The reason being, if you enable the macro, then if you download that Excel file, then there is a very highly chance that that macro get executed, and then the ransomware started acting in your system. Now, this is a very good example for a phishing email. For those who has little awareness on phishing email, probably everyone knows, but still, this is a very good example of a phishing email. We already, everyone is using LinkedIn as one of the professional network platform, right? And normally, we post our status like open to work, but many of us know that it's kind of giving information to others, kind of reconnaissance that the attackers use in order to gather information. So what the attackers know is that you are actively searching for a job, and that can be used as an advantage in order to send out job request emails or message like this, where you're given that you have been shortlisted, and this is the link where you can upload the CV, and you might upload your CV, click on that link, and that can lead you to a kind of subjected to ransomware attacks. Now, just by looking at this message, you can see that there are many things that triggers that this is not a legitimate message. One thing is the typos here, the space and seen here, or maybe you can see some typos in the message, and even the domain by itself, you can see serve1.cyber.net. It does not. Yes.
Ma'am, I think the screen is not shared. We can't see.
Is it? Oh, sorry, just give me a second. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am. Fine, ma'am.
Thanks for letting me know.
Thank you.
It's okay. So, so we were discussing about the anatomy of ransomware attack. We were discussing about the distribution vectors here. So this is an example for a kind of phishing message that you might receive in the name of LinkedIn. Like, probably it may not be a legitimate message, but rather you will be tricking to click on that particular link. So that's just an example. Second distribution vector normally the cyber criminals use is delivering the ransomware as an exploit kit. So exploit kit are basically a kind of malicious module that is planted in the malicious website. So when you normally log into that, or visit that malicious website, what this exploit kit does is it will scan your device to know the vulnerabilities or the weaknesses in your device, and it will then try to exploit that vulnerability to gain access to your system. So for example, in case of a WannaCry ransomware attack, one of the exploit that the attackers used is Eternal Blue. Probably you might have heard about Eternal Blue, which is actually an exploit created by National Security Agency for gaining access to the network by exploiting the vulnerabilities linked with Windows Server Message Block Protocol. So Windows Server Message Block Protocol, or Windows SMB protocol, is basically a kind of file sharing protocol that is used to share the files among users between the systems in the network. And there was an exploit, there was a vulnerability linked with that SMB protocol that was exploited by the attackers. And that's how this distribution of ransomware occurs through exploit kits. So these are the two main means, either through a phishing email, and the most mainly used distribution vector is phishing email, or through exploits, using exploits. Now, after gaining access to the system, the next step that the attackers use is they look for the essential files and then they encrypt those files using various different types of encryption algorithms, like symmetric encryptions like AES, or asymmetric encryptions like RSA. And you know that one of the main key application of cryptography is ransomware attack, and it actually take advantage of that cryptographic algorithms in order to encrypt the files. Now, when it encrypts the file, in addition to that, one thing it do normally is to delete the backups and shadow copies of the file. The reason why the attackers does that is to make the recovery difficult. Now, once it encrypts the file, the very next step that the ransomware attackers do is to show a ransom note. Either they will show a ransom note, or what they do is they will save a text file in the directory where the files have been encrypted. Now, in the ransom note, you can see that they will ask for the amount that you need to pay in order to recover the data. They will sometimes, in certain cases, they will put pressure on the victim in order to pay ransom by providing a stipulated time period. So this is a very good example for a ransom note, where you can see that the attacker has provided instructions to pay, like instruction to pay that ransom. And this is again an example where the attacker also mentioned the time that is given to the victim to pay the ransom. So this is a ransom note normally displayed in case of a WannaCry ransomware attack. They will also say that normally in the WannaCry ransomware attack, initially they will ask for $300. That is the normal scenario. They will ask for $300 in order to recover the files. That's for 2 weeks. 3 days. And after 3 days, they will say they will double their ransom payment, which means they will ask for $600. And after 1 week, then they will delete the file. So they actually put a pressure on the victim to pay the ransom. There's a stipulated time they will set in. You can see that there's a timer here that clock sticks in, and you will have a stipulated time to pay the ransom. So that's overall the anatomy of ransomware. So first, it will get an initial access through a distribution vector like phishing email, or through exploits like the Eternal Blue. Then after getting initial access, the next step is looking for the files, encrypting the files. Then sometimes that ransomware, in order to have a persistence in the network, to have a lateral movement, like moving from one system to the other, it will establish connection with the attacker's command and control server, and then it will encrypt all the files in the network. And then the last stage is showing that ransom note, asking for the victim to pay the ransom amount in order to recover those files. Now let's see one of the case study, which is kind of treated as one of the biggest and very dangerous ransomware attack that the world has seen in last year. In US, that was an attack against the US critical infrastructure, which is the Colonial Pipeline. Now, the Colonial Pipeline is an oil network, is a petroleum oil network. As you know, many of you might have heard about this news, which span across, a long distance. And this was the attack which happened in May 2017. And now in May 6, it started in May 6, the attackers launched the attack. And how it launched the attack is through compromising one of the employees' password, which is the VPN password. And how they compromise the password is normally through a kind of brute force, or it's not actually clear whether they used a phishing email technique, social engineering technique, or whether they use brute force attack to compromise the password. Anyway, whatever tactics they use, they compromise the password. They use that password in order to get access to the network. Now, what they have done is they have actually stolen 1 gigabytes of data. Along with that, they actually requested for 4.4 million ransom from the user. Whereas in May 7, 2021, it was said that they pay 4.4 million ransom in return for their files. Now, in May 8, they publicly announced the attack, and they shut down all the servers and some pipelines. Whereas in May 9, the second public announcement, like discussing about their disaster recovery plans in order to recover the system. And in May 10 to 11, FBI identified that the criminals, the cyber criminals behind this particular Colonial Pipeline attack is the DARKSIDE ransomware group. Now, DARKSIDE ransomware group is actually a kind of, we can treat them as a gray hat hacker because their main objective is monetary gain. Like, they attack the system and financial gain is just their motive. They are not related to any kind of geopolitical, themes, just like the Russian hacker groups. So that's what DARKSIDE does. And the Colonial Pipeline, and in the May 12, the Colonial Pipeline restored their operation. So it's kind of 1 week span. The attack, spread. And what happened is it was a very highly impactful attack, I would say. The US president declared this particular attack as kind of state of national emergency. We could see lots of panic buying of the oil, those kind of things. So let's see what happened behind. So as I said, DARKSIDE ransomware group was behind this attack. So what they does is they first gain initial access, as I said, through VPN password of one of the employee in the Colonial Pipeline network. And then they might use, as I said earlier, they might use brute force attack or phishing attack, or they might have used SQL injection vulnerability related with the VPN infrastructure. Now, once they gain initial access to that Colonial Pipeline network, the next step from an attacker point of view is to escalate the privilege, because the password that they get is for the normal users. But in order to have better foot in that network, they need to get the admin password, right? So they need to do some kind of privilege escalation tactics in order to escalate their privilege. For that, one of the exploit that they have used is MIMICATS. Now, MIMICATS is one of the famous exploit that normally the attackers use in order to gather the credentials from the system. So it's basically a credential harvesting application. Now, once they, have got that privilege escalation done, the next step, the third tactic that they use is persistence. That is having a lateral movement in the system or the network, moving from one network to one system to the other. For that, they might have established a connection with the attacker server, or might have, planted a backdoor in one of the system, and that does the tracking and all. Now, once they establish persistent, the next step is encrypting the files. They encrypted almost most of the files of the in the Colonial Pipeline network, and they exfiltrated data as well. They stolen the data, and then what they does is they stop, delete, and terminate the processes that the organization used, like the Sophos, which was used for endpoint security, Veeam, which has been used for backup solutions, and Outlook, again, all those things. This was done normally to make the recovery very difficult. And finally, as a last step, is the ransom demand. And as I said earlier, they have actually demanded $4.4 million in order to gain back their system. So that's about the case study, one of the case study related to the ransomware attack. Now, moving on to, so you might be thinking, is the ransomware attack targeted on just the critical infrastructure like oil and gas, transport, or water, or, those kind of infra? But the fact is, it's not just limited to the critical infrastructure. It targets all the other sectors as well. One example is education sector, ours being, the education sector. And this statistics will give you an insight into the kind of complexity and sophistication and, the spread of ransomware attack as the year goes, in various fields. And I have taken here an example from the education sector, and this is the statistics published in the Sophos white paper, which is published in July 2022. Now, this statistics, if you look, it shows the percentage of higher education. The light blue color, it shows the higher education and lower education statistics. So the percentage of higher education and the lower education institutions suffered cyber attack due to ransomware in the last year. So you can see around 64% of higher education and 56% of lower education has suffered ransomware attack in the last year. And this is from a sample of 5,600. Now, this is the statistics which shows you out of those attacks, how many, what is the rate of, how much the attackers were able to successfully encrypt the data. So in that case, around 70, in the 74% of higher education, the attackers were able to successfully encrypt the data, and to 72% of lower education, the attackers were able to encrypt the data successfully. And this is taken from a sample of 3,702. And this is there. And so from this statistics, it's very clear that the kind of security measures that we have in the educational sector is not that very good. And that's the reason why we have got, amongst all the other sector, you can see the higher education has got the highest rate, success rate of ransomware attack. And that purely shows, the lack of proper security controls in place. Now, this is an example, this is a statistics which shows how many percentage of education sector has got the data back after paying the ransom. And this is unfortunate that only 2% of the higher education and the lower education has got the data back even after paying the ransom, which shows that, that our data is our wealth, right? What happens if we have a ransomware attack and all the data is lost, even after paying the ransom? It's very devastating, and, it's kind of very sad thing. Now, this is the rate of volume of the attack, complexity of the attack, and the impact of the attack compared to the previous year. So as you can see here, the lower education, around 47% of increase in the volume of cyber attack, around 50% of increase in the complexity, and around 54% increase in the impact of cyber attack. And whereas for the higher education, there is 53% of increase in the volume of attack, 50% of increase in the complexity of the attack, and 50% in the, in the impact of the attack. Again, as you can see, year by year, the kind of complexity, the number of attack, and the kind of impact it creates is increasing. So the key findings from that report is that 97% of higher education and 94% of the lower educations has, has responded that those attacks have impacted their ability to operate properly. And not only that, they have got a very high business and revenue loss. Now, as I said earlier, only 2% of education was able to recover completely their encrypted data. And when you look the recovery time, it takes around, say, 1 month to 3 months to recover the system completely. Now let's move on to, so now you understand what this ransomware and what all impact it creates, and what is the complexity, and the kind of span it has. So now we will move on to different types of ransomware attack. So there are basically 2 types of ransomware attack. One is crypto ransomware, and the second one is locker ransomware. Now, crypto ransomware attack is kind of attack which only encrypts the files. Okay, Bad Rabbit, Crypto Locker are examples of crypto ransomware, whereas locker ransomware is kind of ransomware which locks the victim out of the device, which means it completely lock the system. It's not like it just encrypt the file, rather it actually lock you out of the system. You will not be able to access the device. So WannaCry, Petya, NotPetya are examples of locker ransomware. Now let's move on to each one example in detail. So first one is Bad Rabbit. Bad Rabbit is a category of crypto ransomware, which means it encrypts the files. It emerged in 2017. Now the distribution vector used in this crypto ransomware Bad Rabbit is insecure website, so malicious website. It has got exploit, which will scan your device, look for the vulnerability, exploit that vulnerability, and get access to your device. Now, the exploit used in this kind of ransomware is